So good morning, good afternoon and good evening to all our beautiful viewers around the globe. And here in Aotearoa is our guest today is Christof Melchizedek. So welcome, Christof, and I'm really excited to have you here and go into some deep conversation.
Beautiful. Well, we're having a little chat in the green room, and yeah, we're going to have a lovely chat and navigation through the full vertical of what's been going on the planet. So let's get into it.
Absolutely. So just first off, I'll read your bio and introduce you to everybody for anyone who doesn't know you. So Christof delivers insights that inspire purpose and possibility. He's an entrepreneur, speaker, shamanic facilitator, and highly sought after leadership coach. He's also a dad, a husband, and a man with a belief that creating a conscious community of change starts in our hearts and homes. Christof has spent 28 years working with Fortune 500 executives, pro athletes, entrepreneurs, and experts in health, performance, the healing arts, psychology, and leadership. Coined a spiritual futurist, I love that. Christof has a real gift in translating higher spiritual concepts and physical real world macro trends into practical ways the Western mind can apply. Christof supports entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers to self-actualize by providing the supporting frameworks, skill sets, and energetic intelligence to help grow teams that change the world. He is founder of the Neo-Shamanic Society, a healing school supporting people into a life path in the healing arts. On the live and virtual stage, Christof knows how to captivate the hearts and minds of his audience like no other. He's often invited to share his insights and predictions on some of the most popular podcasts and shows, and he's passionate about leading an urgent global conversation about redefining our planet in these evolving times. Amazing. I've been, as I said in our conversation in the green room, following your work and your mahi here for a very long time, and I'm loving the energetic work that's happening in the background as such, and that's part of the conversation I really would love it to go into. But first of all, Christof, just tell us a little bit about the healing school, your Neo-Shamanic.
Yeah, sure. Well, and because you're in Aotearoa, shout out to all our Aotearoa whānau. I was out of the country for 20 years, and my wife and I returned home 3 years ago. So we're based here in Aotearoa. We're in Taranaki. We came here to send our kids to the green school, and they're loving it there. And so it's wonderful to be back in the country with people here from the place where we were born. So it's beautiful. So thank you for all of you tuning in from New Zealand. So yeah, the Neo-Shamanic Society is a healing school I've put together. My personal life path and journey came out of the physical training arts, where I was a personal trainer and a health consultant. I was fortunate enough to move up the sort of spectrum of influence in that realm, and was privileged enough to teach in 30 or 40 countries around the world, spoke at all the top conferences. So I had a very deep career into that. My path to get to the healing school was really a path of awakening and direct experience. My mother went through, several illnesses when I was young, as a teenager, and when she passed away when I was 27 through cancer. And I got to see, very clearly how the medical industry, is really treating the symptoms and not the person, and really, as I started to investigate deeper, how the same organizations and companies who are putting the genetically modified seeds into the ground with pesticides and sprays on it are the same companies and organizations that are then clipping the ticket on the pharmaceutical treatments around. So I very clearly got to see that the current medical model, while it's fabulous and fantastic at, acute disorder, if you have an accident, break some bones, you're smashed up in any way, modern healthcare is incredible. But for long-term health and disease, are we really going down the right place of just treating symptoms with more chemicals?
Yeah.
So that led me to begin to investigate holistic health, healing, getting into nutrition a lot more. And then through a series of direct experiences of, energy transfers on treatment tables, I began to uncover and unlock the final frontier in the world of healthcare, and that's energy medicine. So I was privileged enough being in Europe that I, could commute to Austria, and I studied with one of the world's leading thought leaders and masters in the energy medicine realms, Dr. Barbara Brennan. I did 4 years with her. She's written Hands of Light, Light Emerging, 2 contemporary energy medicine textbooks. So I did 4 years commuting out there 5 times a year. When I graduated that, let's call it we used to joke it was the Harry Potter school of Hogwarts.
Yes.
Yeah, it's full of magic. I stepped into shamanism.
Yep.
And for me, shamanism was like putting on a glove, and I studied from 2 lines, one from Peru, working with the Shipibos from Peru and working with a plant medicine called ayahuasca. And I took groups out there for many years, facilitating very deep transformational ceremonies using this shamanic ritual with that plant medicine.
Yeah.
Same time, working with a lineage from Africa, working from a plant medicine out of Gabon, working with a tradition there that was also a very deep shamanic initiation. So then through that experience, I began to break through the matrix, so to speak, the energy fields, and began to take my consciousness to a point where I could see what was going on from beyond the matrix looking back in. And all of this path and journey through the training and the nutrition and the health and the emotions and mind and psychology and all of these pieces, including, what I call neo, which means new shamanism. So what I noticed in the shamanic schools out there, they were usually based off a cultural template coming out of South America, or based off a very deep cultural understanding. The new neo-shamanism, I wanted to bring kind of some more of the higher dimensional insights in a modern contemporary way without any of the necessarily the cultural dogma that came with it. So it's really a school that's designed for the Western mind, and it's around about a 3-year journey that students come through to get them up to a level of depth, of integrity, and the ability to really hold deep space for people in a very deep transformational container. And this has been a beautiful journey that my wife and I are on, putting the school together, holding the space. We're now building a team here in New Zealand to help support the back end and all that jazz. We're together. So it's wonderful to be back here in the land of first light. And that's a little bit of the backstory of the healing school, to simply leave a few of the breadcrumbs for others who feel really that a life path in the healing arts is really their calling. I never had any guidance on how you can scale your healing practice. And so I had to work that out by myself, and sort of teaches you the, let's call it digital shamanism, which is more about how do you use the modern tools of technology and the internet to be able to reach more people and touch more lives. And so it's a great privilege to leave those crumbs behind for others who feel a calling in the life healing arts, who have big visions for their life.
Yeah, beautiful. So is it an online, Christof, or have you got a facility that? Yeah,
it's a hybrid. So what that means is that there's online, there's personalized coaching support, small group, large group, and we do some live events. How we do the live events is that we rotate the destination. Right. So next up in February, first week of February, all the students are gathering in the Netherlands. We have a 5-6 day intensive. Then we would probably do 6 months later, it'll be Aotearoa or North America. So we do Europe, North America, New Zealand, and rotate that so that students, no matter where they are in the world, can wait for the next one in their sort of continent, or they can travel and come. So we sort of rotate 6-8 months. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. And it's great to know, because that, so many now are waking and coming into their sort of gifts in the sense of healing and different things. So it's really nice to know there's a school available for them, because there's not a lot of training in that area, I feel.
No, it's really the medicine of the future is really, understanding holistic healing and health, but really working in the realms of energy medicine, which is, understanding consciousness, spirit, soul, how that, because a lot of the diseases today are simply giving people the guidelines that they're off track in their life. They haven't dealt with, they've got unprocessed emotions. that are locked in their bioenergy field and consciousness, which their body is telling them about. But because they can't read the messages from the body, they are shut off from that intuitive kind of investigation of what this is really about, because disease in the physical is the final manifestation of something that has been in your energy field for several years, and you've just not dealt with it. Sure, there's the piece on the toxicity. That's a big problem in today's modern world. We've got two main issues on the physical body, which is toxic overload combined with nutritional deficiency.
Yes.
Those two pieces really then allow the manifestation much more easily of unprocessed emotions and trauma, which have been remained in the field. And because of the amount of toxicity in the body's cells don't replicate without error. So when the messages of the body, when the DNA can be read easily, because the DNA doesn't actually do anything. It basically is a set of blueprints or plans which tells the cells how to replicate, how to code for proteins and make another cell. Well, if the environment's too toxic, well, errors get made in the replication process. Kind of like trying to read a set of architect's plans that are filled with dirt and smudge and a dark room. You can't, the plans don't make the building because there's an error in the translation.
Yeah,
that's what's happening with people. In terms of cancer, cancer is simply a cell that's reproducing into a non-self cell. Then what happens is that non-self cell, because of the error in the replication, because the genome's dirty, because of too much toxicity, that non-self cell begins to migrate to the lowest vibrational area of the body. And that lowest vibrational area is usually the place of that unprocessed emotion and trauma that the person has not dealt with in their life. So typically, what do we see? It's sort of breast cancer in women. We see prostate cancer in men. And if we take a look at the deeper meanings of those, breast cancer is all about self-nurturance. That is usually forgetting about themselves and taking care of everyone else's needs. Except their own. Busy mums can reflect that. Guys, prostate is all about power, loss of personal power, loss of feeling helpless. Then you've got, wherever the cancer shows up, essentially that is, your body giving you a message as to what is the unresolved emotional, spiritual piece that you have left undealt with. So, we kind of, teach how to track and manage all of that. And of course, what we're seeing right now is, people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I think that the modern medical world is not providing a deeper inquiry into the unresolved emotional, spiritual issue, which is the root cause of the symptom. So we're providing a group of practitioners that are trained to do that. And we've got psychotherapists, medical doctors, physiotherapists, a lot of people looking to retrain to see that this is where everything's going in the world ahead.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Because we've always said, like myself working in that industry, in the sense of the healing space, that, how do we get it into the mainstream? How do we merge that in? And I'm seeing that happening now. There's doctors on board here in Whangarei who are very alternative as well. It's so good.
What's going to happen is we're going to see white hats develop. What I call a white hat, someone who's woken up to the illusion and is seeking to do something from the inside out. Because really the mainframe of the system is all part of an overall system that's designed to cap people's evolution and keep everything kind of in one place. But because there's so much light that's coming into the planet, a lot of plasma bursts are coming from the sun and sending in these neutrons that are a very high vibrational frequency. This light is accreting into people's bioenergy field and DNA, creating spontaneous awakenings. So we're witnessing many people who might be career doctors, as an example, suddenly waking up and going, what am I doing? I mean, I'm just like giving pills and treatments that are suppressing symptoms. I'm not getting anywhere with my clients. And I really feel for these people, because it's overwhelming how you adjust and get out of this great big matrix wheel that has been set in motion. So a lot of doctors have a lot of courage out there to look to treat people more holistically. And, this is where these branches of naturopathy, nutritional-based medicine, and all of these things which create health, are probably looking to flourish in these years ahead, because really what the attractive field will be is consciousness. Yeah. As people's consciousness continues to expand, they'll have the recognition that treating the symptom with a pharmaceutical agent is only creating a symptom suppression. It's not getting to the root cause of things. I want to get to the root cause with my clients. So then they'll begin to investigate. I did a medical degree, and they gave me 3 lectures on nutrition, which is the building blocks of health. Okay, I need to go over here and study this. So the system starts changing, I feel, at the grassroots level, right? Where, let's say, the layer, right, of people coming through now, and I'm talking about a generational shift, something that that's not going to happen in 2 years, but something that more happens in 20 years, that the top layer of people who have been through the medical industry fraternity maybe 30 to 40 years ago, coming to the end of their careers, they're not going to change so much. They're going to keep part of the system, and they're just going to, move on as the years go by. But these ones, the base layer coming through now, I think the educational institutions as we know them, the universities, are going to come under enormous amounts of pressure of recruiting young people to want to come into these old ancient kind of infrastructure systems that are no longer going to be in the right vibrational resonance with the consciousness of the young people that are coming through.
Absolutely.
So we'll start to see these new threads of holistic health coming up, where there'll be a greater resonance with, and gradually there'll be this shift. It won't be suddenly the mainframe goes, oh yes, we're going to change our entire medical education system, because it won't happen like that. There won't be the demand of from the people who want to go study these things as there was in the past.
Yes. And I think, and this is something I've really been seeing, and now with our queen as such going, moving on, it's like there's the older generation that held that very old ancient, as the queen did, the very old ancient type of structure that was, it's ancient, and it doesn't fit today. And I think now this whole realm of that type of age group really is moving, and bringing more room for these younger ones and us to come in really. And
it's a beautiful vision of the monarchy tumbling, right, of the queen, right, who has been holding, let's call it, hierarchy. Because this old model you speak of is really looking at an energetic structure, and that energetic structure is one of hierarchy. And that's what the world has been under for a long time, where everyone's been given their power up to a monarch, including the way that the whole governments are structured, where the government is, ultimate power lies with the monarch.
Yes.
All of that is a hierarchical construct based upon the Piscean age. And that's because the frequency and consciousness was running vertical. And that's simply because people back in the day, the vibration was so low that people did not have the ability to have a direct connection with source themselves. Right. And so there was a giving away of power to the intermediaries that held those wisdom. So that was the priests, and that was the mystics. And I don't have to have a direct relationship with source when I've got my priest. And that just created a natural vertical. And what we're seeing now in this new eon that we're moving into, which is more the age of Aquarius, and people all know about this age of Aquarius. They even hear it in the music in the 60s.
Yes. So good. What
does that really mean? Well, very simply, the simplest way to explain it is that we're moving from hierarchy to synarchy. Synarchy is, to rule without leaders, to joint rule, to rule together. And that's because the frequency is going to move from vertical hierarchy to horizontal networks. Right, because every single person will have their own direct connection with source. Then we will begin organizing ourselves based upon ideas and values that we then feel inspired to come and act together, which is what sin means. Sin means in concert with one another.
Right.
And we follow our own kind of flow into following our inspiration that comes from our own direct guidance without the necessary of intermediaries. So, you know, we're in these decades ahead, it won't be only the institutions of, you know, education, such as the big universities that struggle to recruit numbers, but we're already seeing it today in religion, because all of the religious structures that came from that line of Abraham, which is Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, are all hierarchical in nature and are all devoid of the feminine principle. So if we look at all those structures, they're all devoid of the feminine principle, and they're all hold hierarchy through priest class and everything. So all that's going to drop away as well, and people will have their own direct connection with their own higher self-consciousness, their own God source consciousness, and lead themselves from inspiration. So many of these structures are going to dissolve, you know, as a consequence of that.
Absolutely, they are. And I think, you know, if we look at the last 2 years, 3 years, that was a real defining point on, you know, who's horizontal, who
right? Yeah, exactly.
You
that
know,
was all about that, you know.
So I see that.
What was interesting about these last 3 years was that, you know, historically, if you go back in time, the world has swung between mass centralization and mass decentralization. And it was almost the pendulum had swung to this point right where we saw it right then of mass centralization and consolidation of power. And those that were not aware of it had a forced awakening to the fact that you are not as free as you think you are. And this is what happened, is that the control system took it to the extreme, and it created many people to become aware. For many, it was the first time that they were actually in an abusive relationship. You know, like if you've ever tracked on a micro level, whenever you've been in a relationship that you know wasn't right, it wasn't really in your heart, but it was okay, well, you can continue along that line for a long time. You have to have the motivation of pain to really want to get out. And that's if a relationship turns abusive, suddenly I'm out of here. Yeah. Well, that's what happened to many people in relationship to hierarchy, to control, to authority, where the authority came in and said, this, you must obey. And then the people who stayed true to their values, and in New Zealand, we've just had the traffic light system dissolve. So first up, I want to sincerely congratulate all of those of you who stuck true to your values when you were severely tested around not putting a foreign substance into your body that didn't resonate with you. You got really tested. Some of you had to leave your jobs. Some of you had to leave your work. You had to leave behind certain things. You had to test yourself on safety and survival with income being dissolved. You are really the unsung heroes of this pandemic. You know? And, you know, all of you who rose up and said, no, I'm not going to do that, and you can't make me, that was a real test. Right. And then I really feel for those that did take the vaccination, based upon the fact that we're being held over a barrow. You know, you are either going to lose your income and your job, or you're going to take this. And then the whole thing's just dropped away. Leaving people, what was all that about? Right. And it's like such an incredible point of time. And what we've seen now is that there has never, ever been less trust in the world than there is today. There's actually an organization called the Alderman Trust Barometer. And the Alderman Trust Barometer has been measuring trust in the world for 50 years. And trust is at an all-time low. Trust of government, trust of media, trust of big tech. All of those things are at a massive, massive low. People are no longer just, you know, watching, observing and listening to the media and saying that's the truth. Every single person who was reading the media going, okay, is this true or is this not true? What part of this is a perception deception, you know? And I think many people are now awakening to the possibility that these seemingly massive different lenses of pillars of the media, of government, of the pharmaceutical industry, of the military industrial complex, of kind of all of these massive institutions are all part of the same kind of hierarchy and control system that are held together through the, you know, this fabricated financial system that has been created the central banks. Which is then starts to dictate to government, you know, how monetary policy kind of goes, and creates these artificial boom and bust cycles. more and more people are beginning to see that the emperor has no clothes because of what's happened in the last 2 or 3 years. And we're going to get to a flipping point at some point. We saw it happening during the pandemic, and not that the mainstream media covered any of this, but there were hundreds of thousands of people protesting all around the world. What we saw in Wellington, was a small example of what was happening all around the world. And what I think happened to the government was, at first, they thought, this is just a fringe group, right? That was kind of, involved in this. But then as they started doing the opinion polls, they were tracking that they had support of 40 to 50% of the country were behind the protests because people didn't want to live in a medical apartheid system.
That's right.
And then we saw hundreds of thousands of people on the streets, protesting. And to this day, there's more protests that are not being covered in the mainstream media. Czech Republic had hundreds of thousands of people on the streets recently, wanting a change of government. There's a lot of civil unrest out there because people can feel something isn't right with the system that we are in today.
Yes. And I think for many people, they haven't got a vision of what they would like it to be even, they're just sort of so almost blindfolded to that system that there's no sort of, for me in one part there, I was like, we need to start looking further out to what is it we actually really do want or desire here in our lifestyles.
Part of it is the first step of that is knowing what you don't want. Exactly. And I think, that's, I think, the first step that many are out. I know we don't want this. And I think this is where, collaborative action and people's own sovereign vision for a better world comes to action. It's gonna come from grassroots networks, on the ground up of how we operate and live together. And we're going to be very tested. These next couple of years are going to be testing to navigate through. I don't know if you're tracking some of the collusion happening in the energy world, but there's artificial price hikes going on in energy bills throughout Europe. Where energy bills, their potential ceiling has gone up 5 to 10x in England, right? So what energy companies can charge, and that's happening all through. So there's going to be an energy crisis in the coming winter, where a lot of people are going to be faced with difficult situations on covering these enormous energy bills that have been artificially ramped up. Now this will be somewhere that will be another line in the sand that people are going to have to get up in arms about and protest about.
I saw that was like 80%. The rise is going to be about 80%.
For example, if you've got an annual energy bill, we've got a big, got a decent family of size, and we did have a sauna and things like that. But our energy bill is at a decent amount, right? It hurts a little bit each month, and when you pay your energy bill. But can you imagine if that's going to triple, or double or triple, especially for people on fixed income? It's kind of like the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Absolutely.
And then I don't know if anyone else, not only in New Zealand but all around the world, are going out and doing groceries right now. Well, groceries have got a lot more expensive. So
they sure have.
There's this whole kind of squeezing that's happening. The pandemic squeezed out the middle class. That was basically the mum and dad business owners.
Yeah.
And we saw the big tech companies, just gobble up profits. This next squeeze in the next couple of years is going down into the sort of working class of people who are kind of, on fixed salaries, because the middle class of mum and dad business owners got wiped basically with everything being locking down around the world.
Yeah.
Then the energy bills and food prices with inflation going up, but wages staying sort of capped, is going to then squeeze out this next line. So you've got this kind of pressure cooker that's waiting for a little ignition to light up, and things start to really, create momentum and change.
Yes. It's definitely a pressure cooker. You can feel it, It's so like that. But just, groceries, every like basic item that we take out every week, say, is going up every week. We're seeing an increase in those basic items we use. So yes, it's pretty full on. So Christof, there was a lot of work like you've been doing with your team, a lot of energy work in the off planet. And I would love you to get into this conversation with me about that. So a lot of it was, I also would like you to mention and bring into the conversation around the work done on the Treaty of Waitangi here, and how that went. And
Sure.
Yeah, that would be so cool. Thank you.
Well, we're definitely going to be handing out some red pills today. So
Yeah.
for all those of you who are out there who want to have your mind opened to the actual truth of the nature of reality, stay tuned. I'm obviously being invited into that space. So it's always, I have to tread carefully because for some people, they might be the first time being exposed to this sort of information and content. So I have to do some sort of pre-frame to kind of come in so you can understand with your intellects what we're talking about. So as a pre-framing frame up to how reality is that we're living in a holographic projection where the physical world that we see around us is a holographic projection of energy, light, and consciousness. So on a micro example, scientists are now proving that the human body emanates an energy field. I don't actually believe that's true. I believe the opposite is true. The opposite, what they would mean by that, is that it's not the human body that emanates an energy field, it's the human energy field that emanates a body, right? Yeah. So we have an energetic template that creates the physical body. And in the healing school, we talk about different lines of light that form the form-holding template of the body. For example, your liver has an energetic structure, has an energetic liver, which has lines of light, the first level of the field, the third level of the field, the fifth and the seventh level of the field, all have lines of light which create the structure and form, which hold the frequency and the purpose and intention of the liver. And then from that light, the liver is kind of grown and emerges. And it's the same for the entire body. Well, it's not only true for the human body, it's true for everything from the chair that you're sitting on, the microphone I have here, all the physical things around us all have energetic structures. And so the matrix that we live in operates from sound, which creates vibration, the movement of particles from the sound. The first of the sound was the beautiful that sound creates the vibration. Yeah. The vibration starts the sparking of light. That sparks of light then have different wavelengths. You know, when you see the rainbow, you have red, orange, yellow, green, all that. That's different wavelengths, different speeds of vibration, which are creating those hues of colors. So it goes on to create color, which goes on to create form and geometry. And sound, vibration, light, color, form, and geometry are the energetic templates which hold together the physical matrix. Now, once you've got your head around that, then you can go, well, okay, I can understand that. So a human body has, you know, sound, vibration, light, color, form, and geometry, which hold it together. Yes, okay. Now, what happens in, for example, the case of disease, is that holographic template has deviated from its original blueprint. That's what's happened in health, healing, and disease, is that over time, your habits and your conditioning and your beliefs and your emotions create your ideal holographic template to be off its original intended purpose, in which case then you end up getting sick, right? That's the truth of it. Yeah. Now, in our overall matrix, especially on Earth, the original blueprint has been deviated from. We've had this deviation from the original blueprint, which has created, let's call it, external interferences. Now, now that we've pre-framed things up, let's get into the galactic kind of origin of species and what's really happening on the planet if people are ready. So our planet, unfortunately, has had external interferences whereby other life forms from other different star systems, and you have to recognize that our planet Earth is revolves around the sun. Our sun moves around the central sun of the Milky Way galaxy. Within the Milky Way galaxy, there are billions of other suns like our suns, right? Millions of other suns like our suns just in the Milky Way galaxy. And the Milky Way galaxy is one of billions of like galaxies around, the different multiverses. So to say that, humans are the only life existing in the universe is very naive to think of. And actually, the truth of it is that there are millions of different species out there who are all operating within sometimes humanoid form, sometimes reptilian form, sometimes other different forms where their consciousness resides. There are different categorizations of these species, a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Earth is currently a tier 1 species where we're not yet doing interspace travel, interstellar travel. We're not an interstellar species yet. We haven't built up the consciousness and technology to move ourselves around between different star systems. So we're considered kindergarten kids, both in our consciousness and living. There are some species which can move around their different galaxy, and there are third-tier species which can move between galaxies. So what's happened is that our planet has been a coveted resource, largely because of the richness of biodiversity, the amount of gold, the amount of also interdimensional travel, which is available on our planet due to the Stargate system. Other systems, other planetary beings have come in thousands of years ago and created let's call it an insertion, which has brought them into basically being able to have a lot of influence on the planet. What they have done is change the original blueprint. They've changed the matrix to create an energetic, which they've been more able easily to control. And what happened over time was about 5,500 years ago was the final unplugging, where on the Egyptian-Sumerian timeline, about 5,500 years ago, the final unplugging of our human memories from our galactic heritages was undertaken, and the real false matrix that we're living in today was more firmly established.
Right.
This false matrix created a series of energetics where it was difficult for humans to reach their own source consciousness, and we became like little kindergartens. They capped and trapped our consciousness. How do you do that? If you're a millions of years old species, and each individual within that species lives thousands of years, you accumulate a lot of wisdom and knowledge of how things work. So they were able to cap our consciousness, unplug our DNA, and limit our ability to grow spiritually for many, many eons of time. Then what they did is they needed on-the-ground humans who would be in communion with them to insert a control system. This group of beings were what some call the ruling bloodlines, and the various other secret societies and other various minions who were in a path of choosing to accumulate power.
Yes.
They were in service to self path. And there was a various agreement and contract made between these ruling bloodlines and these elite families and these secret societies, which in exchange for putting together the physical systems would accumulate enormous amounts of power and wealth for doing the bidding of these extraterrestrial races. So what happened was that over time, they were trained and taught how to put together the education system, the financial system. Like today's banking system is known as the Babylonian money magic system, which got inserted in the Babylonian times, which was the origin of the fractional reserve banking system we have today. And the elite families who set that up on that timeline, became very wealthy and started this dynasty of control across education, government, medicine, finance. All of these different pillars of society today have been very carefully architected in the 3D, but they're actually held together as energetic structures. Now, the work that we've been doing is that I saw the illusion of the matrix maybe 8 years ago, could see the full totality of the energetic structures holding in place the physical form of the different systems, the banking, the control, the government, the monarch. All of that has an energetic template. But I could never find the source of the control system that locked everything down.
Right.
What do I mean by that? Well, in shamanism, you can do energetic spells, you can do energetic all sorts of things, which create the energetics And you're either, when someone who gets to that level of wisdom, you're going to do it either two paths. You're either going to do it to free people to become sovereign, to follow their own guidance, or you're going to do it to cap people and control them, right? Yeah. It's service to others, service to self. The service to self portion is known as a sorceric line, whereby you are using energy to pull energy to yourself to accumulate more power. That is sorceric energy. Energy that is more Christic, i.e. of the Christ line, of Christ consciousness, you do these types of energetic spells and pieces to free up people to have their own, to make their own free will choice in life, to free them up. Now, 5,500 years ago, in order to lock down these systems, very clever people were trained by these off-planet higher dimensional beings how to create a whole lot of sorceric energy spells that would lock down the financial system, lock down the government, put these structures in place that would never move, that would never leave, that would create the energetic spells to keep everything in place so everything became stuck, right? Nothing could move. Yeah. About a year and a half ago, since coming back to Aotearoa, we've been doing some very deep ceremony work, and through the beautiful path of synchronicity and chance meetings or meetings through synchronicity of other people who have come to the country or moved to Taranaki, we've just developed the right team who together have been almost given the keys, if you like, to find these spells. Right, I've been searching for a long time, and I knew that one day, maybe in this lifetime, we might find them, and we've found them. And we've been working for about a year and a half with a group of beings called the Guardians. The Guardians are a benevolent service to others group of non-physical beings who we're in communication with, who have been giving us the intel they share with us to go on to the next step, and then we share with them. Right. And we've developed a network of on-the-ground guardians. These are incarnated humans who understand at a consciousness level what's been going on and want to be a part of the team that basically is on the ground that helps to pull the threads of all of this whole system. So about once a month, we've been gathering, or once every couple of weeks, we've been gathering to pull these threads of these sorceric energy spells and bindings which have been locking down the planet. We've been finding remarkable things, but the first thing that we kind of saw was the locking down of the entire planet to the governments and the continents through the central pillar, which was the Vatican. The Vatican was the central pillar to all of this and held together all these pillars which held chains to the countries and the continents, locking down the governments and locking down the countries. And we've been doing a lot of different missions around all sorts of different topics. We've just recently done the financial system, which had an entire playbook that was linked to boom bust cycles that we're controlling. And the interesting piece on this was all of these energetics were brought down off planet. That was the same playbook they had used in many different other let's call it galactic civilizations. It's the same takeover plan they have when they go into other planets and take them over. Kind of like, think of what it might have been like in colonial Britain going over and taking over some of the other lands. It's exactly the same with other planets. So we've had all these different institutions and other things that we've been looking at that have formed part of the reason why none of the physical structures have changed. So if you've been someone who's not aware of all of this, but you're always wondering something isn't right, it's not quite, what's not right here? It's because we've been in a system where all the energy has been accumulated and sent up the hierarchy, all the way up to the people in power at the top. These are the 13 families that basically are behind the secret societies that hold all the, pull all the frequencies through. These are the families that own the central banks. A lot of people don't know that central banks are privately held institutions, that the government borrows money from. But then off them, basically, is the high dimensional negative agendaed beings, which are sending them the intel, are setting up the structures for them. And all that energy pulls through to them. And they accrete all of that energy as feeding blocks to their consciousness. So they they are feeding off that frequency of discordance. So all what we call the loose energy, all the fear, the anxiety, the worry, all the other nasty, dark, satanic, ritually type activities that have been going on the planet, and those of you who are diving into this will know what I mean, has all been accreted to go up that chain. In exchange for doing it, the people at the top get their privileges of power, and the rest of that frequency and consciousness goes to the beings who are the architects of this whole kind of matrix. So what's been interesting is the threads being pulled not only through us, but many other people around the world are waking up to the false matrix. And what we're seeing now is that the next layer of the mass public, who saw for the first time 2 or 3 years ago the reality of the situation, no, they want change. Change. We can't continue like this. This is like crazy. Where there's a few controlling the many, and so we're witnessing the system shaking like that. It's like on its last legs. Many of you can feel it. Inflation's running hot. The markets are kind of down. There's a lot of pressure on the everyday person living on the grassroots level of society. There's a lot of pushback coming from the control system of government. If you're living in America, you're witnessing these new executive orders being signed by Biden. It's creating even more authority and control, more, the new IRS, 72,000 IRS people being sworn in. They're recruiting that are going to have the license to kill, like it's crazy. So this pressure cooker is building up. But the beautiful thing is that this is great awakenings happening, and there are people out there who are pulling the threads of the energetic templates and structures that are holding everything together. Now, to bring it back around then to Aotearoa and the Treaty of Waitangi, which you were asking about, the Treaty of Waitangi, has its own energetic stuckness to it.
Yes.
And if you've been researching the Treaty of Waitangi, the original intention behind the Treaty of Waitangi by King George was to give the Indigenous people of New Zealand full sovereignty, right? And right to rule themselves. Yeah. So that's been happened. But back in the day, there was a lot of drama around the signing of it all. Yeah. And the various players who were within that construct, had a very tough time. Now, let me just try to players. Let me just. Right, I'm just going to quickly flash back to some names I need to sort of pull out. But essentially, there was some people who came over by the British government to act as intermediaries, and basically we had Hobson was tasked to act in negotiating the treaty with the Māori and between the Crown, and there was also another player from the Crown side. Now, what we saw as we went into the Treaty of Waitangi energetically, so bearing in mind that everything that exists physically has an energetic counterpart. There was a standoff between the Māori and the Europeans, and there were all the spears in the ground from the Māori, and then there were all the shields on the ground from the Europeans, with the Treaty of Waitangi in the middle, and Hobson, who was negotiating, picked up enormous amounts of karma from all of this, locking everything in place. Yeah. So basically, in the astral plane of the let's call it the spirits of the deceased Māori and the deceased Europeans involved in the treaty was in a karmic gridlock. And that karmic gridlock, created non-action. Now, down the line here, from this place, if you're not aware of the treaty, there's a ritual that happens every year where the government comes and picks up an envelope, and in that envelope gives the government an annual authority to rule the country. What happened is that the government had to sign a side deal with some tribes to give them the authority to rule the country, because in the treaty, the original edict is that we are sovereign and rule ourselves. Right, yes. Now, when we first came to New Zealand 4 years ago, we did a ceremony on the Treaty of Waitangi grounds. It was really interesting. My wife and I and a group of about 15, 20 people who were touring the country with us. On the actual grounds, we went in and energetically we saw the thread, the locking down with sorcerer spells on the treaty Waitangi grounds linked to the treaty, that then started to move off planet to the Crown in England, to the Vatican, and then to Babylonia. That's the line of the control which locked everything down. We undid all of that work to free all that up. So that was more in flow, that cut off that connection to the Vatican. But about a few months ago now, it was recently, we found a direct descendant of Hobson, who has his direct genetic line, and that genetic line gave us the code we needed to be able to go up and clear some of the karma that was required, that was done, locking this whole thing down. Yes. And we petitioned to the high councils, which are the spiritual hierarchy, so the spiritual councils, which provide permission for me to use certain codes and to use certain clearings. We were granted 55% karma clearing on this issue, right? So what that meant is that the karma that was created, that was locking down any movement to move our Treaty of Waitangi into becoming more sovereign once again, was locked. 55%, according to them, was going to be enough to get some movement on it. So we provided that clearing, and now there's enough clearing for this whole piece around the annual authorization from the tribes. Just a selected few tribes who authorize this is going to start to move, because what the contract does is it binds New Zealand to, let's call it, the control groups or the cabal groups, which are controlling and locking all the entire planet down. And what we foresaw was that New Zealand would be the first country in the world that would free themselves from the central banking control system, basically, which is the cabal groups. So we saw that happening within 4 to 5 years. So in the next 4 or 5 years, New Zealand may well break free of that central banking control system, and then it will be like a dominoes around the world, because New Zealand being first light, whatever happens here on Aotearoa is significant globally, because whatever happens here in the world happens here first and then mitigates around the world, including, with New Zealand's been first in many things, including women having the vote and sovereignty and all sorts. Yes.
And did you hear too, just recently, just a week before the Queen passed, the Vatican have called in all their assets back to their own Vatican bank?
Did not hear that. They probably realise that the outposts are going to go down, right?
The deadline's the 30th of September. So 1st of October, they're reckoning there's going to be maybe the shit hits the fan in the sense of the banking system collapsing or something. There's something in the pipeline, definitely.
Yeah, we're hoping that there's a relatively smooth transition, that it's not just the whole system collapses, but it's more of a gradual transition.
Yes.
That ordinary people don't necessarily have their lives upended, because you can imagine if the banking system suddenly went down and people go to get some money out to pay their groceries and it's just not there, well, suddenly you've got chaos where people revert back to survival consciousness to try and build through. So we have this is a news I haven't shared before, but my wife and I have been granted a seat at the table. And this is due to some of the work we've been doing in the background with the Guardians and the other group and other people around us, where the table being the Galactic Councils have now, made the decision that humanity is graduating enough to warrant them having a seat at the negotiation table of the higher dimensional councils, the Galactic Councils. So Alea and I are on the seat of what's called the Council of Eldest, which is a hosting system for other the ascended consciousness of other star nations.
Yes, beautiful.
So we are in the petitioning, and they're all working. There's so much support for humanity right now. I mean, if people really knew how much help we're being given, because the reason why other star systems are coming to support us, and it's not like a rescue us thing, it's giving us the keys, the support, the codes for us to help ourselves. That's what has to happen. We have to make it happen ourselves. We're not going to get suddenly rescued by some off-planet group of ETs. No. It's that we have to do this from the inside out. And this is why many star beings incarnated into the planet at this time. And we spoke earlier before about this, is that many of us are awakening or awake in the dream, knowing that we're supposed to be here at this time. And that's for this transition. So many of us have come from other star systems with the latent memories of the architecting systems that support a harmonious conscious culture. And we're bringing these codes of either healing or architecting back into this world to birth forward the new systems and support and consciousness that is going to support, our planet's graduation, essentially, from what is typically called in the higher realms the prison planet, which is what we've been under. Exactly. So we're breaking free of that prison planet kind of status. We're waking up and we're going to, solve it within ourselves, but I did want to say that the councils have decreed that they're doing all that they can with us supporting. And when I say us, I'm talking about all awake beings who are standing up for truth.
Yes.
And all those beings who are standing up for truth and sovereignty and freedom are being supported in their endeavors right now to be able to ensure that we're not just going to walk off a cliff. Basically, that there's a bridge built at the cliff top, so that we can bridge across into the new. Yes. So there's not a big massive collapse. That there's a transition that happens.
Yes, I think if there was such a collapse, people's nervous systems have had enough. I really don't think people would cope with that in a really good way at all. It would be devastating. If it doesn't, that's not the timeline we are actively, looking to support. It's a gradual transition whereby we move, but it's not over by any means, because there's still, if you are, clinging to the service to self path and are if you're at the top of that pyramid and you've got accumulated all this, you're going to not give that up without a fight, right? You're going to try some other plays. Now, essentially the pandemic playbook did not work for them. In the way that they were thinking, right? Because they wanted to push through the vaccine passports, which were going to link to the central bank digital currency system that they were looking to put in to create a digital control system of both identity and money. Well, basically all around the world, hundreds of thousands of people were up in arms about that and said, no, we're not going to stand for that. So they had to pull back, right, on that first thrust of agenda. Yeah. So the most important thing that we can do is you can't be a silent majority and just shrink back into the shadows and just allow things to happen. By doing that, you're giving them authority to do what they want to do. You have to stand up for what is right. And here's the thought, here's the piece, is that every single person is going to be tested on what they stand for. Because there's a very simple saying, isn't there, that if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And we saw a lot of people fall, during this first round of tests. Well, there's going to be more rounds of tests, but more people are waking up and we're standing together, right? And when you stand together, there's power in that. So whatever you're seeing in the world, if you don't like it, you must peaceful protest. That's the only way you can make change. And it has to be peaceful, because if you start to go violent, they start to bring men with guns into the equation to start to quell all of that, and it gets violent. So peaceful protest is the way that we gather, we network, we share resources, and we support each other in the building of the new, of how we want it to be. Absolutely. And it is an exciting time. I know it's been a terrible time and horrific for many and all of us, really, until we got our heads around what was actually happening. And even though we might have known it was coming, which I know I did, but it was how it played out was a bit of a shock for me. But there's so many wonderful things that are happening from that now. So many people are waking up, and lots that had gone down, like you say, that track, are now realizing actually that's not my soul calling. It's not where I'm meant to be heading, and what's happening, really changing direction.
Exactly. What's happening to people is that this forced awareness is make them recognize the calling in their high heart.
Yes.
And then suddenly, if you're turning up into a line of work that you've been trained and conditioned to perform, and you wake up in that, and then your heart isn't in it anymore, you can't undo that. right? And that knocking on the door just gets louder and louder and louder until it's completely intolerable that I continue to support the very machine that I'm, fundamentally, ideologically, and philosophically, in diametrical opposition to.
Yeah.
So, then people are left with the heart direction. And as we come into greater heart resonance and we have the courage to follow that, and that's the great message now I wish to share with people is that you're only dealing with fear, right? Fear is not real, it's a perception. It's a perception of what you think might happen in the unknown future, but it's usually based upon the conditioning you receive when you're very young, which is not being truly anchored into your physical form very deeply. Therefore, you have a first chakra survival issue where you don't trust the unknown. Because if you're fully embodied and grounded and rooted into the earth, you know that the unknown future is going to be safe for you.
Yes.
However, if you have that conditioning where your parents were arguing a lot and there might have been alcohol or drugs in the family and it was chaos, your consciousness didn't really embody into the earth, into your body, into the earth as much. Therefore, you don't feel safe in the unknown. Yes. So therefore, when you want to leave what is known into the unknown, and especially when it's laced with survival, because it's where you get your money, and money equals survival in today's world, you end up perceiving that things will not work out for me if I move into that direction of my heart. And the great, wisdom piece I wish to share is that just trust and let go of that. That's an illusion. That's not necessarily true, because otherwise you're going to become frozen in fear, stuck in that kind of place of being stuck and not being able to make the change. So you can either witness and watch the story unfolding, or you can be the author of the story unfolding by following your heart. And that's the great awakening now, that people are being called to follow their heart, to walk through the fear. The first round of people have already done that. Some people ideologically gave up their jobs because they didn't believe in being vaccinated. Right, so they had to walk through that line, right? And next comes the next wave. The next wave of people who are waking up and saying, I don't believe in what I'm doing anymore. I don't believe in, supporting the pharmaceutical industry. I don't believe in supporting the manufacturing, meat industry. Whatever it is, wherever you find yourself in the system that you no longer believe in, you're looking to then say, how do I create something new for myself? And so we have witnessed what we call the mass resignation. The mass resignation from this pandemic is people not going back to work. It's people going, screw that, I'm not going to do that anymore. And this is only going to increase. And so the message is that wherever there is fear, there cannot be love. But wherever there is love, there cannot be fear. For they are simply poles of the same arc in this law of polarity. So the secret to this is to come into your hearts and know yourself as love, because that's what we are. We've just moved out of our divine blueprint of not knowing ourselves as love and becoming fearful. But when you can truly love yourself and you start to fill yourself up with that love that you know that you are, then it begins to overflow. Because the challenge with most people is that they don't know themselves as love. I think I have to get love from my partner, or I have to get love for over here. So you end up in these unconscious negotiations for love in codependence. Yes. I'm dependent on this person for my love, so I need to try to manipulate how they behave or manipulate their perceptions so they like me more, so I get love. So most people are living and trying to manage other people's perceptions. When you are self-assured and strong in who you are, and you know that you are love, it overflows. Therefore, you come into every relationship with none of the neediness that comes with being empowered. And then you fulfill others up from the overflow. And you put that into your path, knowing that with love, every step will be met. Just like the Indiana Jones scene when he has to cross the chasm with a bridge of faith. That's exactly what every one of you is having to go through right now, who wants to leave their security of their job and to walk in the direction of their dreams. I was just talking to a man today before this call, wanting to leave oil and gas to go full-time in the healing arts. Oh, wow. So you can rest assured that if oil and gas guys are wanting to get into the healing arts and wanting to leave, a multi-six-figure dollar income to go into some other direction, there's a mass exodus that's kind of coming, and you're
Yes.
not alone.
Absolutely. And that's, you know, courage. It takes courage for sure. But that trust, you know, it's learning to really embody that trust and the unknown.
Yeah, it's starting
it's
on
a
small
fun thing.
starting with small things first. You know,
Yes.
start small, and
Yeah.
then it builds up from there. And what I've noticed in my spiritual path is that the only thing that gets bigger is the amount of zeros on the end of your trust. Right?
Yes.
You just, you know, asked to move from a $10,000 trust to 100, then 1 million, and then 10 million.
That's
You know,
right.
as your consciousness grows, your decisions and weights carry more with them. But you have
They
to
do.
prove yourself in the early stages first.
They do. Wow, Christof, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And thank you so much for coming in and having this conversation today. And I know that, you know, the viewers, those who tune into this and are going to pick up so many gold nuggets from you. It's
Sure.
wonderful. But completely keep doing exactly what you're doing, and obviously you will, you love it. But thank you for all you're doing. And
So welcome.
there was such a time there, you know, where I was seeing everything was just happening in the physical actual. And then it was like, well, you know, we need to do more energetic work, because it was more the energy stuff that needed to be sorted.
Everything was stuck, and yeah, we're looking forward to you know, more of that to come. We're not going to stop. So
absolutely. Wonderful stuff. Well, thank you so much again, and love to the family. And
absolutely. And if you want to, you know, if anyone wants to follow along with what we're up to, just go to christof.love, CHRISTOF.love, LOVE, and then just, you know, sign up. There's a free meditation there, you know, morning ritual, but most importantly, get on our mailing list, and I sort of do some sharings that provide these little red pills and perspectives, both here in the physical and the energetic, but also practically for your home and your family life. Because after all, we got to make the new earth at home in our family. You know, it starts there. If you can't make it happen at home, you can't make it happen out there. No. So that's the foundation for everything, is our whānau and our family. So put all your energy and resources and love into ensuring that your children and you and your wife and your partner or your husband are filled with love. And from there, the world changes. It's as simple as that.
Beautiful. Thank you. Much love to you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.